I really appreciate Dr. Looper's willingness to let us have this time to review some things that most of us know, if not all of us know in this room. But I always think it's a good idea to relook at some issues, and just like our students, we may think that because we tell them one time that they're going to get it and they're going to know it and they're going to do it. But sometimes it takes repeated exposure to a topic or an idea to move forward with that. It also takes practice, and I'm not training at all. All I have done is gone through a lot of videos, and we're going to watch several videos, thus the popcorn. So we're having popcorn and movies this afternoon. Everything's available online. All the training manuals are available online, documentation, videos, blah, blah, blah. It's all there, but it takes a lot of time to maybe put it together and sit there and even look at it. So I've spent some time doing that, focusing mostly on animal handling at this point. And I don't want to leave the swine people or the sheep people out, but beef cattle are what I have focused upon. That's the easiest access. Pork Quality Assurance Plus has some videos they say are coming, but last I've checked they're not available yet. So I'm going to focus on beef cattle, but the principles are the same. How we handle the animals affects our end product and everything in between. So the principles are basically the same. So I appreciate, again, your being here and taking the time. I'm going to say right up front that I am not a technology expert at all. So I've had some issues with the videos. Most of these are all on YouTube or available on YouTube. So you can get to them, just like I got to them. You have to search for some of them. Most of them are through the National Beef Quality Assurance Program. At the end, I've got some links that are very easy for you to jot down, or at least know what to look for if you want to go look for all of these yourself. And we will try to provide this for you later. I do want it to be a very open format. We want to discuss later, how can we make this better? What have we left out? Because I know I'm not covering all of beef quality assurance, focusing on handling. Okay? Okay. So that's what we want to do, is we want to review humane handling goals. What are our goals and our techniques? How are we going to do this? We want to document the training. A robust training system simply means it's written down and signed. If there is some type of incident, if we can go back to the documentation, that really helps the situation. Yes, we've taken means to provide training. Our people have been trained. Here it is written. So that is called robust. Okay, so we want to do that. We want to be robust. Once you get through the training, I have this fear that the farm books, which I have for our farm managers, are going to go on a shelf, and that'll be the end of it. Got that over with. But that's really not where it is. We've got to retrain if we have an incident, and we have to reassess. We have to assess our progress. We measure a lot of things, but we don't have a tendency to measure animal handling or welfare very easily. But there's templates and things to do this now. So I'm going to show that to you if you haven't seen it before. Again, these are National Beef Quality Assurance videos mostly.
Beef quality assurance encompasses cattle handling because how we handle our cattle actually impacts beef quality. And when done correctly, not only does beef quality go up, but so does the profitability of each producer. That's why it's so important. So let's take a look and give a listen to what these leading experts have to say about cattle handling and hear their tips on ways we can improve.
With the cattle handling, the main thing is to get the animal where they're not afraid of you, but will respond to you. And there's a real difference there. Fear, they just run off and they're not thinking about where they're going. But if they're responding to your pressure, they move where you want them to go and how fast you want them to go. Cattle, if they can see you and you let them respond through vision rather than noise or hitting them, then they'll start working for you off pressure. The next thing is cattle are going to try to go to other cattle, or they want to be with other cattle. So you can use that to your advantage or disadvantage. And then the last thing would be they like to kind of go where they're headed. They want to be straight and going in a line. If you can use those things and then add in the balance point, which is the point where the animal will stop and turn away or come on by you. The farther forward the balance point is, the easier the animal is to work from the front end where you have the most control. The flight zone, or what I would rather call as a pressure zone, that's the area where the animal starts to move away from you or respond to you. And the more precise and the more control we have on the pressure zone, the better our animals work for us.
That's my objective, is to do it smooth enough it doesn't look like I'm doing much. And that approach everything we do with those cattle that way, to make as small a movements as I possibly can. And that way I don't cause pressure on the cattle when they're not expecting it or I'm not expecting it. Because if I'm making big moves, I'm causing pressure on cattle I'm not even thinking about. And so as quiet and calm as you can keep it, and keep your hands down as much as possible. Then if you do need to make some noise or throw a hand up to build movement in cattle, then it's a tool that's available to you. Otherwise, you keep your mouth shut until you need it. That's kind of hard for some of us to do.
When you're moving cows and calves, the driving aid, the main thing there is not to panic the animals and cause the cow to leave the calf or the calf to run off and leave the cow. We want to keep them mothered. And if we're sorting or whatever, we don't want to have this panic movement happening in our cattle. When we have that panic movement, that starts the stress and it keeps it going and it gets stronger and stronger. So rattle paddles, if you use them properly, that's fine. Sort sticks used properly without hitting the animals, using them to stop or just nudge them along, that's fine. Hot shots, I don't like them with cows and calves. They'll get you kicked, and calves, they'll never really get over that fear.
If you understand some of the principles of the flight zone, working the point of balance principles, and getting rid of distractions that make animals balk. Coats on fences, you don't leave this flag right out where you're going to try to drive the cattle into it. You've got cars parked by the fence, there's a hose across something, a bottle on the ground. These are the kind of distractions that can make animals balk. You need to get down in the chutes, see what your animals are seeing. Now there's a lot of facilities that, even some very simple facilities that you can make work really well if people keep cattle calm. You get cattle all excited, it takes 20 to 30 minutes for them to calm down.
All the work we do in the corrals starts when you first gather them out of the pasture. And this is when you first contact those animals or run into their pressure zone or their flight zone. The way you get the animals to respond to you, like when you put pressure on them, you should let them have a chance to move away from you. You're teaching the animal to move away from pressure. Going out through a gate, you get somebody in front and you let those cattle work by you, and that teaches the animal to go by you, just like they have to do coming up into the chute, and they also learn to go away from that pressure. When the animals go under stress, they don't come into the heat as well, they don't breed up as well, and they kind of hide out. And we don't want those things. So breeding, AIing, low stress handling is real important to have high conception rates. AI is one of the places where you can learn how to handle cattle very well, because you single an animal out, you bring them into a chute or a breeding spot, and if you mess up, you got to go back and do it over again. When we're heat detecting or bringing an animal in to breed, if you start running them and chousing them and fighting them in, your conception rates are going to go way down. Learn how to work animals controlled and in a low stress manner, and you're going to have higher conception rates. The thing we got to really try to realize with our cattle, if they're out in big country in the open, they're probably pretty low stress. But if they're in a confined area like a grazing system or small pastures where they're being moved, or maybe there's a lot of activity around them, that can really affect your breeding time. A lot of bulls are real timid and they won't breed except in night if there's other people around or things. So really watch your cattle and make sure that the surroundings are not affecting the breeding program.
This may be an oversimplification about where people make mistakes, but to me it goes back to training cattle to take pressure. And that starts with pasture work and proceeds from there. There's certain things that we do that I think are all training opportunities for cattle. We don't think of them that way. Anytime we have a chance to get out in the pasture on a four-wheeler, a horse, or on foot, you can teach cattle to drive away from you and stop them, and all the things that you're going to need them to know how to do when you get in the corrals. The other aspect of that is if people call their cattle in with cubes or feed or hay or whatever, those cattle are not ready to work. And so often when we get them into small confined areas where we can handle them, we go to pushing on them and they don't understand what we're asking them to do. So that's why working cattle in the pasture is so important, to teach them to respond to pressure and release. And then you can work down into smaller and smaller confined areas and it doesn't tend to bother them as bad. So if you've just trapped them or called them into a situation, they're not ready to work. And we see this in cow-calf operations, stocker operations, feedlots, every aspect of it. They tend to drive cattle from behind. And I don't know if you notice in working the corrals today, I'd always try to push the cattle away from the gate that I wanted them to go to where when I get pressure on them and they could take the pressure off by going to the next corral. So I'd always push them away from where I want them to go and then release them. And it doesn't take much to do that. You just kind of step back a half step. But that teaches them, once again, that you're going to take the pressure off of them and let them go to where it's less stressful. And so every one of those opportunities I have to move them from corral to corral, out of the pasture, makes working them through the chute so much easier.
We want to actually train them. We want to teach them and train them to respond to our vision and our pressure, using their balance point and the pressure zone, use small movements. I like them saying, let's keep our mouths shut, keep our hand movements small until we need them, keep calm. We don't want to create panic in our animals. Different tools that he mentioned quickly were the rattle paddles or sorting sticks with little to no electric prod use, because electric prod does create fear, especially in cattle, that sometimes they don't recover from, and try to eliminate the distractions that would keep them from moving easily. So those are all things that we can easily do as handlers. The work does begin in the pasture. We're teaching the animals, and we need to practice. He said that a lot. We need to practice in the pasture. That's where our techniques, our handling techniques can get better. So if you're using the four-wheeler or a horse or on foot, go out there and just practice. Send your least experienced people out there with you and practice. Practice moving those animals and teaching them and training them. He mentions push them away from where you want them to go and then let them go through. I thought it was interesting that he mentioned the AI conception rate should increase with low stress handling. We're always measuring our performance. How are our animals reproductive wise? What's our conception weight? What's our AI rate? What's our weaning weights? You know, all average daily gain. All of those things we keep measuring, but we've got to start with the handling, and we've got to measure some of that too. So the common mistakes are not training our animals to take the pressure, just driving them in. So those are things that we want to work on a little bit. We have a lot of student workers, as Dr. Looper mentioned, coming in and out. They might be animal science students. They may have taken some courses where these topics have been introduced, but they might not have. So we do need to make sure that our students, all of our workers, are exposed to the same goals that we are.
Too often the old cowboy code says you can tell a man or a woman what job needs to be done, but you don't tell them how to do it. Here's a different take on that idea.
It's important to make sure everybody's on the same page. And even if it's a lunchtime get-together or coffee before you go out and start to work, it's important that everybody kind of make sure that the folks that are coming in, make sure they understand what's expected of them, and the folks that are having them in, make sure they understand what they expect of the help. And so it's important to have those kind of get-togethers and talk about things. In the middle of getting done what you want to get done, sometimes tempers get a little short. People do things without thinking, and it's much better to have folks on the same page.
I would prefer to have more help than less help. Just because you don't have to make as many tracks and everything can go pretty fast. You can build a real flow. Most of the time working cattle through a chute set up, you really need 4 to 5 people. But you need 4 to 5 people on the same page. If you don't have 4 to 5 on the same page, I'd rather do it myself, because they're impeding the flow that you're building. For the most part, most of us put the least experienced person a lot of times in the back, bringing the cattle into the system. In my opinion, the most important part is getting the cattle into the system, because that sets up all the flow, keeps the stress off the cattle till they're in that chute. And that's been a change in philosophy. I used to be the one that sent the least experienced to the back to crowd them in there. That's the totally opposite approach we take now. So either myself or somebody that understands the system will get in the back and bring the cattle. The problem with too many people is that too many people are trying to be in charge. The key to handling cattle this way is most people are just herd holders. And one person needs to be the one putting pressure. The rest of them are just holding a location. And if you're in a pasture and everybody's pressing on a set of cows, they don't know where to go. And so as you bring cattle around and are going to corral them, there needs to be one person that's putting the pressure on the front, and maybe the ones in the back are still keeping pressure, keeping movement going. But everybody can't be hooping and hollering, or it's just going to become into cow chasing. And so that's the big difference. We used to work in crews of 17 and 18 people. We now try to do everything with less than 6. So we try to find the people that are interested in what we're doing. A lot of people aren't. They want to do it the way they've traditionally done it. We get better production out of our cattle, less injury to people, less injury to cattle. And so we've chosen to do things differently, and we're going to work with like-minded people.
If you're utilizing temporary help, it more than likely you would want to put those in a position that does not require the most attention or the most skill, especially when it comes to handling the cattle and utilizing the flight zones of cattle. So if you can get them on a sorting gate, or pushing cattle with a crowd gate, or somewhere where you have to have extra personnel, it's best to use those people in those positions.
So kind of go through the process and tell them what you expect. Tell them where to stand. We've got to be very clear with our discussions and our communication. He likes more help versus less help. Just kind of reiterated some of the things that he said. Put the most experienced person in the pasture, which I thought was different than most philosophies too. So it starts in the pasture, and again, that's a good place to practice. If they don't want to be there, then we probably don't want them there either. So you'll be able to tell that right away. Okay. So there is a lot of emphasis on moving the cattle. I think that's important. Again, that's low stress. So this typifies on horseback. Some of us do use horseback in some of the facilities. Some are on foot, some are on four-wheelers. Sometimes we even have to move up and down the road.
No matter how you're moving your cattle, the principles stay the same. It's just the techniques that vary.
Anytime we're moving cattle, we want to fight the urge to go around behind them and just push them. Try to ride straight through the cattle, straight lines, and ride like you're riding through the back end of the cattle. It gets them to going forward, which causes the ones in front of them to move forward. And then you have this, they'll get up and move a lot like they leave and go to water. If you have calves at their side, it gives those cows time enough to find their calf, pick their calf up, and go with them. If you just come in and start yelling and screaming and chousing them, they all run off, and it's like pandemonium at the mall. Nobody knows where their calves are, and a lot of times you'll have calves running back, and real trouble there. So slowing down at the start of getting your cattle to move and mother, take more time there, it'll save you time at the end. When a cow has a calf, whatever handling the cow has had, she understands that. And so when you ride in and pressure a cow, she moves off. Sometimes at a high speed, sometimes at a low speed. But the calf, he hasn't been trained. And so a lot of times we'll unmother the calf from the cow because the cow responds and leaves her calf. So the first time I get contact, or if I get a chance, I will try to teach that calf to move just like his mother. And just a little bit of time, you know, 30 seconds, a couple of minutes spent moving a calf, teaching him to take pressure from the left side, the right side, move off straight, stop, turn, all those things that the mother already knows or should know. That'll be real rewarding in the future when you're handling those cows and to keep them mothered and paired up. I like being horseback, and I like using horses with cattle. I ride a lot of colts, and the main things I try to get for working cattle low stress. I'm not talking cutting horses here or roping horses or anything like that. Just moving cattle in a low stress manner. The first thing is have that horse calm and relaxed. If you can get your horse to stand still with his head level without swishing his tail, the cattle will settle and relax. But if he's jumping up and down and whinnying and trying to go back to the barn or whatever, you're going to have a hard time settling those cattle. The next thing is he just pretty much has to be able to go straight forward, stop in a straight line, back up. Now that's real important to be able to stop and back up, because that's how we take the pressure off. We move into cattle, we back our horses up and take the pressure off. It's nice to be able to turn them real precise, so you can always keep that distance that you need to maintain the proper flight zone or the pressure zone. And you also got to get to where you can get to the balance point with the horse's head or shoulder or wherever you need it to be.
The horse just allows you to be in position a little quicker, a little easier, and a little more precisely than you would be on a four-wheeler. Anytime you get a horse out of a trot, you're probably going too fast working cows. And that goes against the grain of a lot of folks. But working cattle correctly, you're going to be at a walk or trot most of the time. And the trot would just be to reposition yourself around a set of cattle. Now, if you want to lope to a set of cows, that's one thing, but you have to slow down when you get there, just like you would on a four-wheeler. Let the cattle know you're coming, see how they're going to respond. You don't want to just flush them with a horse or a four-wheeler. So when you do that, I still make the zigzag behind the cattle when I'm working on horseback. When they start going the direction I want them to go, I tend to move out away from them, out to the side where I can control the front from a distance. So it's really not any different. The main thing on a horse, you're not causing noise, and noise is one of the most distracting things to a cow. So that's one reason I try to stay as far away from them with a four-wheeler as I can. I might actually work a little closer on a horse than I would a four-wheeler, but not much.
There are some cattle that walk real fast, 4 or 5 miles an hour, and some cattle that walk real slow. Normal cattle probably walk 2 or 3 miles an hour. A horse probably walks 4 or 5 miles an hour. So what happens is we're always pushing on those cattle with a horse. If we're just walking in right straight behind them. This is why I like to ride zigzags like a good hanging tree cow dog or a border collie dog would do. They zigzag back and forth. So they aren't going faster than the cattle. When we push those weak cattle, like a foot rot animal that we'll have a lot of times have to move somewhere in a herd, or a weaker cow, when we keep pushing on her, pretty soon she either gets mad and starts fighting us, or she just quits and lays down, and it's just not a good situation. And what that is we're just trying to move them too fast. And if we can't slow down enough for the slowest animals, then we better leave them back and come back and get them or something, so we can keep up with the rest of the herd.
The main advantage I see to a four-wheeler is that if you're not adept at riding a horse or something like that, it allows you to cover more country than you would on foot. There's not any real advantage to using one of them as far as managing movement in cattle, because you can do everything better either on foot or on a horse because you can reposition yourself quicker. I don't know if you noticed in the film I would turn away from the cattle. The big problem with four-wheelers, people don't go out past them far enough when they're making their sweeps back and forth behind the cattle. And if you turn toward them, you have a tendency to turn the cattle out away from the drive. And so you either have to go out and turn back away from the cattle and come back behind them, or go way out to the side and make that turn and then come back straight. So they're a little more difficult to be in the right position on a four-wheeler. But they're a tool that a lot of people have, so you need to learn how to use them. But they're not something you're supposed to chase cattle with. And that's the main thing that I see people misusing them, is they try to run cattle with them and get going too fast.
When you're putting bulls out or gathering bulls, we still use horses for that. As far as pasture sorting, the four-wheelers don't work for that at all. So horses are still a real advantage there. maybe the biggest advantage of the four-wheeler in this system of rotating cattle during the growing season is we can get to the site where we're going quicker, and then we can, once we get the cattle moved, we can get back to doing something else quicker. It's just a time saver for certain jobs on the ranch. It isn't going to replace the horse completely, but for this particular job of rotating cattle in the summertime, why, it works pretty well.
Most everybody needs to get off a four-wheeler when they get in a corral situation. Once the cattle come in out of a pasture or a large trap area or water lot or whatever you want to call it, you probably need to get off of it. Otherwise you wind up making too many moves and too much racket. And that allows you to transition from gathering the cattle with a four-wheeler to being on foot, which is you're going to be in the corrals, you're going to be on foot because you're not going to work them in the corral. Most of us don't think about that transition. If you're working cattle horseback or on a four-wheeler, that's what they're used to. Until you get on the ground, that's a totally different game to them. If they've not ever been worked on foot, a lot of people have cattle and never seen anybody on the ground. You need to be able to tell that when you walk into that set of cattle. And if you're horseback, then you need to get on the ground, on foot, and lead the horse with you, to where that's a slow transition. And they get used to you being on the ground, but that horse is still there as kind of a comfort zone for them. On a four-wheeler, kind of the same thing, but it's more abrupt sometimes because you can't let that four-wheeler go with you. And so if you just jump off a four-wheeler and go to hollering or running at cattle, they're not ready for that. So it may be very stressful. Some of them, it may be what they're used to. So it just depends, and you have to read each set of cattle differently.
We're spread out in our operations. We've got 4 or 5 different places, and we move a lot of cattle down the highway. And it's better than putting them on a truck and hauling them short distances of 1 or 2 miles. So we do a lot of trailing, and with that comes some irritation, I guess, to some of the neighbors or people that drive the highway with having to go through cattle drives. So we've over the years learned that it works better for us. We probably use one extra person to move cattle, but our cattle, we try and move down one side of the road. We put a lot of horseback guys up the side and keep the cattle moved to one side. There's always a side that cattle would rather walk up, whether it be the right side or the left side, but it kind of depends and on where we are, and kind of depends on how many driveways we got to go by or how many gates we got to go past. So we send people ahead, but we always keep riding the sides of the cattle, keep the cattle flowing, keep them spread out. It sure makes for good neighbors when we don't all just sit in the back and tell stories and let those cattle bunch up and take the risk of getting a car dented or something like that. So traffic is a big thing that we have to deal with, so it's easier for us to get those cars through the traffic. We'll ask them to move to the other side of the road. We'll hold up some cars while some cars cleared. So it is you're kind of doing a traffic deal and you're moving cattle at the same time, but we get along pretty good with the neighbors and have gotten along real well in the past, and we keep those cattle moved out to the side for them.
So again, just fight the urge to go around them and push. Ride straight through the herd and then pressure them in. Make sure you let the calves mother with the cows. Don't separate them. Slowing down in the beginning saves time. So I think that's an important point. Our horses have to be calm just like we do. So you got the horse to take care of and the cattle. So that adds a little bit of pressure to make sure everything's going smoothly, but it can be done. Same on the four-wheeler. We got to control how fast we go and the direction that we go. He talked about different rates of walking. Some cattle walk slower than others. We got to walk as slow as the slowest one. And if we have a foot rot issue or some kind of limping problem or illness, then we have to take that into consideration. If they're in pain with the foot rot, they might get angry, they might balk. Sometimes he talked about in another video, hide in a bush. You know, we can't get them out because we're pressuring them too much. So slow down for the slowest animal, and we're not going to chase any animals. He likes horses because it can be done on a quicker method than maybe a four-wheeler, certainly on foot. And again, he talked about getting off once you get in the corral, especially on a four-wheeler. There's too much noise, which bothers the animals a lot. So it's real important for our animals to know what a human being standing on two legs looks like. And most of ours do, because once they get into the working facilities, they've been there. But it's nice for them to see that out in the pasture and in the corral too. So I think we do a good job with a lot of these things. Like I said, we just need to be reminded of some things. And sometimes our philosophies change. And I'm glad we don't have to go on the roadway. Do we move them much out? Do we have to move them down the gravel roads at all, much out to the beef cow-calf unit? And there's not much traffic through there though, is there? So it's not too bad. But we can handle it if the traffic does come. And I've, in my past, crossed a major highway with cattle several times, and sometimes the drivers get a little upset, but you just have to get it done and, you know, do the friendly wave and be efficient. So
when we talk about trying to look at cattle to see if they're healthy or feeling sick or whatever, the cattle have to trust you. This is where the predator-prey thing comes in. If the cattle look at you as a predator, they're not going to show you the true, if they're sick or not feeling good, they're going to try to mask that or hide it. We see that a lot in the feed yards. If the cattle like to be around you, understand what you want from them, they'll show you if they've got a little bit of foot rot coming on, or if they're a little pneumonia or not feeling good, they'll let those signs show you. But if they're afraid of you, you won't see it until they're so sick it's too late to doctor them.
An animal that's sick and has a fever and has a long way to go to the corral, you're going to want to take them real slow. Take your time. So that would go for an animal that's got respiratory disease or lameness or something like that. For diseases like pink eye or foot rot or those kinds of things, move them as slow as you have to and get them in and doctor them. For diseases like grass tetany or anaplasmosis, you better not plan on moving them. You better try to do the best you can right where they're at, because the stress of trying to move them may kill them right there on the spot.
You really got to think when you're working with cattle with pink eye. The reason you have to do that is if the animal is blind in one eye, you've got to work all from the other eye. You've got to work either voice, which doesn't work as well as vision. So if you've got to make sure that calf sees you from, if he's got pink eye in the left eye, you work everything from the right side. And you can either draw the animal and turn him, or you can get out wide and turn the animal pushing him. But if you get behind him and he gets confused, he won't be able to see, and he'll turn around. He'll turn exactly the opposite way you're trying to go so he can pick you up with that other eye. Handling pink eye cattle is very, very challenging, but when you see somebody that's really good at it, it really tells you that they know how to work livestock. When you're dealing with foot rot animals, you've got to slow down. An animal with foot rot or a sore foot, he can only go so fast, or she can only go so fast. And if we try to hurry them, they can't go, they start balking on us, they get angry on the fight, or they get confused and try to hide, or they just quit you altogether. A foot rot cow might only be able to walk 2 miles an hour. So we've got to really slow down, and every time we put pressure on that animal, we got to let them have time to get that pressure taken off, or else they'll just start fighting us.
One of the things that we run into from time to time is a terminally ill animal. Whether it's an injury with musculoskeletal damage, broken bones, those kinds of things, fractured spine, or an animal that's terminally ill from a medical reason. We sometimes have the realization that we need to humanely euthanize that animal. And it's not a bad thing to do it on the ranch. Once again, the BQA guidelines have euthanasia guidelines, the way to do it. You know, with the landmarks and the methods, if you're going to use a captive bolt gun or a rifle, that way the animal is rendered insensible immediately. They don't suffer anymore, and then you can go ahead and dispose of them in a manner that's consistent with your local county ordinances.
Zinpro Corporation, in conjunction with Kansas State University, is pleased to introduce a program designed to address the problem of beef cattle lameness. The Step Up Management Program takes a comprehensive industry approach designed to help veterinarians, nutritionists, and feedlot managers identify, diagnose, and treat with the goal to prevent beef cattle lameness. Overall, the industry prevalence of beef cattle lameness may be underestimated. It is a growing animal welfare concern, in addition to having serious economic repercussions for cattle producers. Studies have shown that 90% of lameness in beef cattle is caused by problems in the foot, the most common being foot rot and toe abscesses. Correct diagnosis of the underlying problem is critical to successful treatment, but it starts with first identifying the signs of lameness. This video is designed to help the industry with proper identification of beef cattle lameness, as outlined in the Step Up Management Program from Zinpro and Kansas State. With improved diagnosis and treatment, beef producers can see improvements in areas such as average daily gain and feed efficiency, resulting in increased profitability, improvements in overall animal well-being, ultimately leading to improved public perception for the beef production industry. The Step Up Management Program starts with the Step Up Locomotion Scoring System. This systematic approach is designed to properly identify the level of lameness, from mild to severe. Locomotion scoring is based on the observation of cattle walking, with special emphasis on their head bob and stride length. Animal observations should be made on a flat surface that provides good footing. Let's begin. A locomotion score of 0 is given for an animal that walks normally, with hind feet landing in a similar location to the front feet. You will note no apparent lameness or change in gait. A locomotion score of 1 denotes an animal exhibiting the initial signs of lameness, a shortened stride with a slight drop in head. The animal does not exhibit an obvious limp when walking. A locomotion score of 2 is given to an animal that exhibits an obvious limp, favoring affected limb or limbs, with slight head bob when walking and an arched back. And finally, a locomotion score of 3 is the most severe score, given to an animal that applies little to no weight to the affected limb. The animal may be reluctant or unable to move, and if able to walk, the head will be dropped and back arched, with head bob and limp detected.
So let's say they are terminal, they are sick, we are not going to be able to treat them, so we have to euthanize them. Who's going to be trained in doing that process? Who's in charge? What are the methods that are accepted methods? So we have gunshot, penetrative captive bolt, and barbiturates that are administered by a licensed veterinarian. Where's the target area? The point of entry should be at the intersection of two imaginary lines from the outer corner of the eye up to the pole area. And it's real important that it's in the correct area to prevent suffering. So we have to train the people that are going to be responsible for doing this in the proper location, the proper tool, the maintenance of the tool, and all of this needs to be documented. So with the gunshot, it does, if it's properly executed, does produce instantaneous death. It's inexpensive to use. You have to make sure you use the right caliber. You have to make sure that the person that's doing it is aware of the safety issues that could occur if it's not properly done. Doesn't really require super close contact with the animal. So the firearm options that are according to the beef quality assurance are handguns or pistols, rifles or shotguns. And it says that 22 calibers or rifle loaded with a solid point bullet is sufficient for calves, but may not be the best choice on adult animals, and particularly bulls. You know, you've got really, really thick skulls. So we need to decide, I think, collectively what we're going to use, what calibers, where those weapons are going to be located, who's going to maintain them, who's in charge, basically, when that decision has to be made. Also need to make sure that the animal is dead. So we need to know what the signs of unconsciousness, absence of corneal eye reflex, no vocalization, no gag reflex, no tongue movements. The tongue needs to be soft, flaccid, no respiration, obviously, no attempt to right itself. Okay. And then we have to know what we're supposed to do with the carcass. So according to the Arkansas Livestock and Poultry Commission final rule of 2004, we can render them, we can call a renderer, we can call someone to come and pick them up and haul them away. The vehicle's not supposed to come on the premise, just at the edge. We take the animal to the truck, which I'm not even sure if that's even possible any longer. Are there still renderers around? Tim, do you know?
Not that I know of the main farm calls.
Yeah, okay. Not a luxurious business, I wouldn't think. Burial, extrusion, cooking carcasses for swine food, composting, incineration, or open burning, where the carcass is reduced to ash. Sometimes the carcasses can be buried on special order of the state veterinarian, especially if it's anthrax. Bury them on site. So if we do bury them, they're supposed to be at least 100 yards away from a well, in a place where a stream cannot become contaminated. If they're anthrax cases, they're supposed to be covered with 1 inch of lime. Others can be covered with lime as well. They're all supposed to be covered with at least 2 feet of dirt. And they're not to be buried in a landfill without prior approval of state veterinarian. Now this is the latest addition that I could come up with from this organization. So if anybody knows others, please let us know. We'll update them. If you're going to compost, do we compost at all? Is that what we're doing? Okay. Yes? Okay, composting. Needs to be odorless, prevent fly larva development, prevent animal depredation, and stop leaching of waste material into the water or soil. The bones must be brittle and easily broken, has to reach a minimum peak temperature of 130 and maintain the temperature of 110. And there are even more specific guidelines for those that are exposed to weather or those that are protected from weather, so if they're undercover.
Cows are pregnant most of the year, hopefully. You know, nine months out of 12, they should be pregnant at one level or another. But it's the cow that's up close. I mean, she's going to calve in the next couple of weeks. And so you would really want to minimize the stress, because stress induces a certain number of hormones to increase in the animal's body. And those stress hormones are actually what trigger parturition. So, you know, the birth of the cattle or the calf can be speeded up to, you know, come too soon, so to speak, by stressing them right near calving. So really be careful of the pregnant cow that's close up.
For the most part, we handle them exactly like we do the rest of them. We haul them the same, we load them the same, we work them through the chute the same if we need to. So there's not any real reason to work one the last month of pregnancy. Any kind of vaccination should have been done prior to that in the last trimester of pregnancy. So in that last 30 days, it's best to have all your management done and leave the cattle alone and get them in calving pastures and ready to calve.
Now moving bulls is a different issue, and I know that we deal with live bulls at the cow-calf unit, so we do need to address that, and that's a little trickier sometimes than the cows and the heifers and the calves.
Handling bulls is a really different situation. And each bull is going to be different. The problem with a bull is you never know what kind of mood he's going to wake up in. And so you always have to approach a bull with caution. I don't care if he's been a lifetime pet. He may wake up that morning in a bad mood and take somebody down and kill them if they're not careful. The thing with a bull, if you put too much pressure on them too quick, their natural instinct is to fight. They're not much like a cow who's either fight or flight. A bull's going to fight. And so if you put too much pressure on him and don't give him a chance to take it off himself, he's going to learn to brace against you in the pasture, in the corrals, or whatever. So there is a technique to that, and you need to do it with bulls or cows or whatever. Is you put pressure on a bull, if he starts to make any advance to you, you probably ought to back up a half a step or a step until he backs away from you. And then you can go and put more pressure on him until you do that, and you can teach him to turn away from you. And so that if a bull's on the fight, either leave him alone, put him with cows, or really take your time to work them, because they can really become dangerous and they can charge you at a moment's notice. Once they learn to drive and you get them to going away from you, that's where that sweeping back and forth behind them works a lot better. Because if you just stay static on the rear end behind them, they'll normally turn and face you.
We breed our bulls to be very effective breeders and to be very resilient to lots of different harsh conditions. And some of that is a bit of a problem because they're tough. Moving bulls, you really need to know the individual bulls. It's important. Some of them are a little different temperament than others, and oftentimes I know at home we treat some bulls right out in the field without a halter or anything because we know their temperament. Others, we got to get them in the corral. There's no two ways about it. So, you know, bulls are a different group of animals to deal with because they're just so tough and independent and used to doing things their own way.
I would like to see you spend a little bit of time getting the bulls where you can move them, you can control them, you can put them anywhere in a pasture and work with them a little bit before you turn them out with those cows. I even like to get my bulls, if I got some young horses and some young bulls, I'll put my stock trailer out in the middle of the pasture and just get them where I can load them without any facilities. And it's real good for the young horse. And all you got to do is when the bull's looking away from the trailer, you put pressure on him. When he sticks his head towards the trailer, you just take the pressure off. Before long, he'll think that trailer is the brush and he'll go get in it. So I like to do those kind of things before I turn the bulls out. And then when I go to get the bulls or pull them, it's a piece of cake. When you're handling bulls that are sick, you've really got to slow it down. Bulls are big, bulky animals. And when they don't feel good, it takes a lot of work and they get sore and they don't want to go. And they'll turn and fight on you faster than any other animal. Or they'll go find a hole or some brush and then you can't get them out. You can't put enough pressure on them to get them out. So when you approach an animal that's sick, a bull that's sick, you've got to put the pressure on lightly and let that animal move away from that pressure. The first thing I want to teach that bull is that I'm not going to keep that pressure on. As soon as he moves where I want him to go, I'm going to take the pressure off. Once you tell that bull or teach him that, you can take him anywhere.
So they are challenging, they are different. They wake up in a different mood maybe every day. I think that was kind of interesting, his point. Obviously, we've got to use caution. We don't want to use our least experienced help to go try to get the bulls in, do we? No. So make sure you have experienced handlers. They're going to fight more than anything if we pressure them too much. So they're a little bit different. So we've gotten the cattle in from the pasture, now we're going to sort them.
There's a lot of different ways to sort, and sorting can be one of the most stressful things that we do with a cow-calf operation. How you sort, whether you're doing it in an alley or out of a pen or whatever, it also teaches the cows quite a few lessons. If you're not careful sorting in an alley, and if every time something comes by that you don't want to come by, you jump in front of it and stop it, pretty soon you can't get the cattle to come by you, which we have to do to sort. So if you keep your horse calm, or if you're on foot, if you keep your paddle use or whatever you're doing, keep your arms at your side, causes the cattle to want to come by you. And when you do need to stop one, just simply back up, slow down, and turn them back. Don't jump in front of them. And that's what I really liked about the sorting today, is the cattle were learning to work as they were getting sorted. When we're sorting, it seems to me, what I've seen, is the less people you have, the better. When you get too many people, the cattle get confused and everybody's doing too much and they don't want to work as well. And the other thing is, the less numbers you have, people seem to slow down. When you got a lot of cattle to sort, it seems like it does something subconsciously or mentally, and you always hurry up. And cattle can only think and work so fast. And so to speed up, sometimes we got to slow down. So numbers shouldn't matter. It should matter how much pressure you put on to get the job done at the time.
So often underestimated is the impact we can have on our cattle. So whether you're sorting, branding, weaning, or processing, how we approach those cattle in the very beginning has a great impact on the success of that operation.
It teaches the calves and the cattle lessons, so if we do a good job, then it's just going to make our job easier later on. He mentions the fewer people, the better, at least with sorting, so we don't confuse the animals. To speed up, we must slow down. And again, the pressure is what we're trying to teach the animals, how to react to our pressure. We talked about, he mentioned the tools, whatever tool you're using. So I pulled up the American Veterinary Medical Association Livestock Handling Tools guidelines, which are just mechanical aids used to direct livestock movement. It should be secondary to good facility design and handling. So our tools are just an extension of ourselves, and they should be specific to the species. We should make every effort to ensure that we have adequate ongoing training in animal handling and behavior, which is what we're doing today, and be regularly monitored, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Electrical devices such as stock prods should be used judiciously and only in extreme circumstances when all other techniques have failed. Electrical devices should never be applied to the sensitive parts of the animal, such as the face, the genitalia, or mucous membranes. And then, of course, disabled livestock or downers, non-ambulatory animals, should be managed accordance with the AVA-MA policy on disabled livestock. So we need to make sure that we have a downer program in place. Now, this handler's tool is a leaf bag filled with air on the end of a flexible stick in a major processing plant. Now, you do see he has on a protective vest and helmet, but he's carrying a flexible stick with a large garbage bag, and that's their handling tool. We also occasionally twist tails, don't we, for those that balk, that don't want to move forward. So I'm going to attempt this video also.
Anyone in the cattle business, whether you are a beef producer or a dairyman, will encounter times when you want an animal to move forward, such as in a handling or loading chute, and unfortunately, the animal refuses to step forward. Often, we can use our positioning, our voice, and even our touch to get the animal to move forward. But there will be times when none of those techniques will work, and we'll need some way to apply more pressure to get them to move forward. It's one of the reasons why people have used whips, sticks, and stock prods to help get cattle to areas they do not want to go. But those devices can be misused, and the use of those tools can be viewed as inhumane if used excessively and cause bruising. For those reasons, the industry has adopted alternatives such as cattle rattles and plastic devices meant to scare cattle rather than cause them pain. But what are the options when an animal refuses to move forward? One useful method is to grab the animal's tail, 1/3 of the way down, and twisting it just a little beyond its natural movement so that the pressure is applied on the vertebrae in the tail. The natural response of the animal will be to move away and move forward and try to escape the pain. Applying a tail twist properly to encourage forward movement is technically a form of negative reinforcement, just like training a horse to stop by pulling back on the reins. As soon as the horse stops, the pressure on the reins are released. As soon as a cow steps forward while you are twisting its tail, you should stop. If you don't release the tail when the animal steps forward, you run the risk of two things happening. One, the animal doesn't learn to step forward when you twist the tail. And two, you end up applying more and more pressure and more twisting, which can potentially lead to a broken tail. The best analogy is to think of the tail as the ignition switch, not the accelerator or the steering wheel. As soon as you get the desired effect, the start of the animal to move forward, you should release the tail, even if the animal has only given you a half a step forward. The next time, you may only get another half step, or a whole step. But by the time you've twisted a tail 3 to 5 times and released it immediately after the animal begins forward motion, then the animal will have learned that not stepping forward will result in some pain. Within the distance of 5 to 10 feet, you can train a naive animal how to step forward when you ask for it, if you apply the tail twist properly. It's incredible how quick they'll learn how to avoid the twist by stepping forward. The proper application of a tail twist and release is a simple, effective, and humane way to teach cattle to step forward when required of them, and is a benefit to both cattle and people.
So what are the tools that we like to use at the farms? Rattle paddles, okay. Prods, a sorting stick, do we use those? Not at the swine. And you use sorting boards at the swine farm? Yes, boards, paddles. Okay, so if they don't rattle any longer, the rattle paddles, what's happened? It's probably cracked and the BBs are gone. We can fix those. We can put more BBs in them, tape them up, and keep using them, because sometimes it's just the sound of the rattle. One of the most effective tools when I was doing my research at a large processing facility where the line speed is 390 animals per hour moving through was the handle of a bleach bottle that had been cut, and they would just rub it on the side of the alleyway. The sound, the noise, and a cowbell. So I think that we can be creative and come up with ways to use byproduct resources that we have at the farm, make some noise, do something to get those animals to move. Okay? I think we all have tub and snake systems on our facilities. I'm going to also address, or the video is going to address after this one, the bud box system too. And the point being that whatever facility you have in place, it's never ever going to be perfect, but we as handlers can learn how to use those facilities and sometimes think of ways, inexpensive ways to improve upon them, but use what we have. And there's pros and cons to each system. So this is the tub system that we typically use.
Once cattle are received, the next logical step is processing. Now, depending on their age and their history, quite a bit may need to be done in the chute, and that involves a lot of handling. Using the correct methods here can keep stress down and help performance.
Processing begins when you enter the pen, the home pen of those cattle, or the receiving pen, to draw them out. You want to approach them in a slow fashion, make sure that you let them know you're there. And as you go to the alleyways, you want to use those same techniques to draw those cattle to you, keeping them as quiet, as calm as possible. That way, as they enter that tub or box or snake, they'll stay quiet and calm.
The main thing as we go to pull this pen we want to consider is flight zone and balance point. So as we approach the cattle, we'll slow it down, get them ready to work. When they're ready to go, we'll step in, use that balance point to bring them by, and keep the pressure on until we reach the alley. So as we approach here, we're watching the reaction of the cattle. We know they're going to want to be at these other cattle. So as we step in here, when they get ready to work, we'll slow down here, slow down, slow down. Now, as they get ready to come by us, we step in, pressure the eye, find the balance point, and as soon as they step by us, we step back, take the pressure off, let the cattle work. Now we move in. I'll keep the back flowing. Ron will keep the direction pointed in the front. I'll step across. Ron will work that side of the pen. I work this side. Now we got to change our mind again. Step back, step forward. Now we create the pressure, keep the cattle flowing through the system. A real important point to think about is not getting into habits. When we walk into this pen of cattle, they should tell us which side to go on to bring the cattle by us the best, by the way they're shaped up in the pen. So as we approach the cattle, we walk in and I decide, right now I'm thinking maybe I better go to my right here because the cattle will flow out this way best. And as I step in here, I'm going to pass these cattle on to Ron. So we're working together here. As soon as they get to his balance point, I step back and Ron takes over, and I just keep cattle flowing to him. So I'm just going to keep sending cattle, and he keeps them going straight. So we're working together here, and we have to kind of keep our mind on each other as well as the cattle. Once the cattle start flowing, I can start sending him a little quicker to him. to keep that pressure from behind coming forward. I don't move forward here. If I step forward here, I'll stop my movement going to Ron. His idea is just to keep these cattle going. And if we make a wrong step or something, we just correct each other. We just fill in for the other person. We're watching the other cattle as well as the other person. Now we got a straight line, and we gotta move in a way that tells these cattle in the back that they need to go that direction. And we'll send these cattle. Now we're not. This will be a way these cattle will learn to flow away from us, and once they get ready to go, once they get ready, which they're getting set up now, once they get set, now we can move in and put a little more pressure, which will create that flow that goes right through them. Once they get ready to go, we want to keep the pressure on so that they don't change their mind. We got to keep the pressure on, but we can't put too much pressure. It'll send the cattle on the backside over us. Now my side is flowing through pretty good. I'll keep them moving by stepping back and forth, and they should find a way to flow through that open gate down there.
Most feed yards now either use a tub, snake, and chute system or a bud box and chute. These systems leverage the natural herding and movement behavior of cattle for safe, efficient, and easy movement through the processing facility.
The thing I like about the tub and the way it works is we can use the tub and the shape and the design to flow cattle. The more skilled you get, you use those skills as well as the design of the tub to help move cattle through the system very effectively, safely, and in a way that they are ready to receive their medicines. They're flowing right through us as we speak. So when I'm bringing cattle into my tub, if my tub will hold 10 head, I want to only put about half that many in, 5 to 6. The other thing I want to make sure of, before I send my cattle into the tub, getting ready to go to the snake, I want to make sure the snake is empty and has somewhere for those cattle to go. We got to time this out real carefully so we don't have people waiting for us at the chute, but we also don't have cattle stored in the tub as well. So once we get ready to go here, I'll send from the back. The man from the front, he can keep them flowing through there. And if they have somewhere to go and enough room, the cattle should flow through just fine. As soon as they come back, I'll position them again from the back. I'll get them ready to go. They have somewhere to go, so as soon as they find it, they're ready to flow through our tub. The next thing we need to think about is before we bring cattle to our snake, that the cattle actually have somewhere to go. So patience is the virtue here, not loading cattle when there's nowhere for the cattle to go. We don't want to store our cattle in our tub. When the cattle get in the tub, we want to make sure they have somewhere to flow and go. When we get the animals in here, we got to get everybody set going the same direction. Once they decide to go, they go. So rather than forcing the animal in here, what we need to try to do is get the animals set up to go. Once they all get set up and decide not to be here, then you can push them. But until that time, there's no use pushing them. All you're trying to do is set that up, put enough pressure on the animals where they're looking for a way out.
So I bring this gate back, I'm thinking about the next draft of cattle, and as I bring it back, I want to get those cattle where they're comfortable coming by me, to where they come in Kurt's position where he is, they will be comfortable coming by him, and he can step forward and put that pressure on them. So this works together. I'll go with that flow, and I'm going to try to keep their eye on this side, where they'll come around that corner and keep their flow going. If my timing's right, all of these cattle would fit in there. I was a little early with this one, but we still have the draw on that set of cattle, taking them into the snake, but it's all the setup from the way we get them out of the pens in the back, bring them into this alleyway and keep drawing on that eye and bringing those cattle around. You don't even have to hurry, because I need a place for those cattle to go. Most everybody gets in a little too big a hurry right here, trying to bring too many cattle too quick. So I'm gonna wait till I can start seeing them move up a little bit, be ready to bring 4 or 5 more head. You have to be willing to be patient. You also have to be willing to hurry when it's necessary to catch up. So if you get a little bit behind, don't be afraid to put some pressure on them. Make sure they've got a place to go. I need to slow down just a little bit coming around that corner because they're slipping more than I like. But I still have to keep that pressure on them to come around.
The biggest challenge is to not injure the animals. That's the number one. To keep ourselves safe, the animals safe, and then get them where they flow through, where they're not scared going into the chute. The chute's even going to create more pressure than I'm creating here. It's very important to work as a team. As Ron brings the cattle and the gate around him behind, what I can do is I can stay at the front, and as he sets his gate and he gets ready and he stops it right about there, then when the cattle come, they'll have enough room to turn around. As soon as they get ready to turn around, with me being in the front, all I have to do is step by, and then the cattle are ready to flow. The tendency is to want to go around back and push from that side, but if Ron and I work together, I'm the draw, and I get the cattle go by me like they are trained to do. All Ron is doing is creating a barrier back there so they don't leave me.
Cattle have a natural behavior to go back to where they came from. A well-designed curved chute takes advantage of that tendency because as they come on around the bend, they think they're going back to where they came from. Also, a well-designed round crowd pen takes advantage of that same tendency because as the cattle come on around the crowd pen, they think they're going back to where they came from. Now, a lot of round crowd pens are laid out wrong. They're too straight through. If you just go straight through the tub, you might as well not have one. You also need to make sure your chute is not dead-ended. As an animal comes around to the entrance of the lead-up snake, he needs to be able to see up there 2 body lengths. If you bend it too sharply, it's not going to work. Proper layout is really, really important because if they're laid out wrong, they're not going to work.
What we're trying to do here is I'm trying to get this animal ready to go by me. This is the balance point. Balance point, find the balance point, then go with him. Try to draw this other animal forward to me. I turn my shoulders away, I draw this animal to me. Now I'm ready for the balance point again. Step back, send him, step here, he's ready to go.
Once cattle enter the chute, continue to work quietly and calmly around them. Keep talking to a minimum, and shouting should be avoided at all times. Prevent loud noises when possible. Don't move too quickly or aggressively. The calmer you are, the calmer the animal will be when restrained. Once the animal is in the release area, make sure it gets with other cattle as soon as possible. Don't leave it by itself. A single animal often becomes bothered and is prone to injure itself or one of your crew members. Again, avoid the use of loud noises, cattle prods, quick movements, or aggressive talking. And remember, processing starts when you enter the receiving area or home pen. Whether on foot or horseback, make sure the cattle can see you. Finally, and this may seem odd, but for best results, you really need to let the cattle tell you how they want to move. A good hand reads his cattle and responds accordingly.
So questions, comments? Do our systems work pretty well at our facilities?
Look, I find it incredibly noisy all the time.
Very
so
noisy?
I always wonder when they said, well, keep calm and keep quiet and so forth, that opening up the gates and all that, it is so noisy. I don't even know, is there something that's supposed to be in the future less noisy, cushioning or whatever?
Right, he's talking about how noisy the metal clanging. You can put little rubber stops on lots of the areas. Sometimes they're effective, sometimes they're not. They wear out, but it's been shown that the clanging noises of the metal is less stressful than people yelling. So at least we can avoid people yelling. We know to do that. So that seems to be less stressful to them, but it is loud in some areas, especially the faster you're going. And we know that noise bothers the cattle. Something that they did notice, I did notice on the gates, is they don't push the gate in the crowd pen up against the cattle, leave them room to turn around. Some people advocate only on the first or second notch to give them plenty of room, but they said 2 or 3 times, make sure that snake is empty or at least room for the cattle to go up into. We're not going to hold the cattle in the crowd pen as a holding area. And I know that we get in a hurry sometimes because we want to let the people up at the front that are processing have cattle and keep flowing, but it seems like in my experience with our research, we're not spending 3 seconds or 5 seconds, we're spending 30 seconds, sometimes longer doing our procedures. There's a lot of things going on with our research cattle. So it's better for them to be out in the pens and then come in and get worked than to try to stand in that alleyway or the snake and in the crowd pit tub. So I think that was good points that they made about that. Let's see, what else? Don't store cattle in the tub. It's not a holding area. It's really kind of a walk-through area. Patience is a virtue. Be patient. Don't push them with the end of the gate. Don't bring too many cattle too quickly. He said if your tub holds 10, bring in 5 or 6. So about half. And don't close it up real tight. Give them room to turn around. And most importantly, have that alley, that snake area where they can go on up into the alley. Okay? So any questions? Anybody found differently about that? They disagree completely. Let's try those and let's practice some of those techniques. While they're in the chute, we want to be calm and quiet. We do that. I don't think anybody else in our facilities, right? Be sure and release them where they can get with the other cattle as soon as possible. Avoid prods, loud voices. Again, the voices and yelling seem to be a bigger stress factor to the cattle than the clanging gates. But we can decrease the clanging of the gates too. Read your cattle. This is the bud box system, Bud Williams. Some of the research, the feedlots that we went to recently are using the bud box system versus the tub and snake system. So there's different philosophies, and here's theirs on the bud box.
Another system for handling cattle used at many feed yards is the bud box. Excellent at the processing barn or at loadout. Dr. Tom Knopfsinger explains more.
This design is a design that's been given to us by Bud Williams. The bud box is named after Bud Williams, and it's important that you know it's not so much the design that's important, but it's that we have trained our people, and we want to create a scenario in these cattle where processing is actually an adventure. We notice that as we process new cattle in these systems, that each time we have to treat them or process them, they will understand the system more fully, and it gets easier to process cattle. The principle of this system is that the end is open, so the cattle very willingly volunteer to come in this system. It enhances their instincts. We all know that cattle go someplace, and in 7 to 15 seconds they will turn around and want to come back where they've come from. And what the system is, we ask the animals to volunteer to come into the bud box, and then the handler shuts the gate, gives the animals a second, and then works from this area, either this corner or even outside of the bud box. It instills the concepts still that cattle always want to see what is pressuring them, that's the handler, and they will really simultaneously want to see where we expect them to go. The whole idea is outside we're going to communicate a trust to these animals and convince them to volunteer in here, and then we're going to let the cattle volunteer to go where they want to go. When they turn to start down this straight adjustable alley, these animals, it's very obvious to these animals that there's an exit. And as they volunteer to go through this system, you'll notice that there is absolutely zero hotshot use, and the handlers are located at the chute, somewhere between the front of the chute and the back of the chute, and then the other handlers are back here in the bud box area. So typically on a large processing day, we'll have 2 people working here creating flow into this system, and then all other people are at the front managing the flow through the system. Some people in our industry are debating which types of driving aids are most effective. You'll notice this crew had no reason to use a hot shot. They used handler position to ask these cattle to volunteer to be in the chute. In order to expect vaccine response, in order to expect response from dewormers and other growth promotants, we need to be able to send our cattle through a system with a mental attitude that is very, very positive. One of the reasons cattle volunteer to flow through this system are two of the design aspects. Include the fact that the sides are straight and very adjustable, so we can adjust the sides so that the animals can stand with their feet at the appropriate width apart. One of the things that animals do when they become alarmed or suspicious of something, they want to place their feet wider. So we let them do that, and that in fact creates confidence. The other thing is the flooring in this system is very friendly to traction. It's a rumbar floor, a rubber floor, so that's very, very friendly and gives them very confident footing. So all of a sudden, this animal is very, very confident that it's not going to fall down, and it's very confident that it can stand straight and be balanced and athletic. The other aspect is that this system is straight, and when the animal turns, it can remain straight and athletic and balanced.
You can see there's a lot involved when it comes to the processing phase. A lot of handling occurs, a lot of opportunity to do things right, which will make a difference, both out here in the pens as well as in the processing barn. Keeping that stress down will bring the performance up.
In summary, the bud box uses the animal's natural instinct to go back the way it came. It's more open to allow cattle to see where they are going, and cattle have more room to stand, which cuts down on their stress. Fact, regardless of the system, when cattle are less stressed, they are easier to process.
We need to take a look at what could go wrong and plan for the mistakes. Plan for our bad situations. What are we going to do when something does go wrong? How can we avoid problems? Write it down. We need to train and educate, retrain. If something does go wrong, if somebody does something incorrectly, that's our first step, is to re-educate and then assess that that got through. Again, we don't hear things one time and know it and know how to do it. Sometimes it takes more than once. And then we want to document that we are doing some training. I also found the free online training through the Arkansas Beef Quality Assurance Program, because I'm searching the internet looking for things, and this is free for all students and teachers. So when you go to the Beef Quality Assurance, you can do a state by state. So Dr. Troxell's here with us today, and I'm glad that he's here. So you look up Arkansas, you get certified, click on the Get Certified, and then this screen comes up, and I've circled where there's a collegiate animal care training. Okay, we're here, right? This is free. So this is the next slide, and then you get registered so teachers can sign up all of their students during a course, or students who are assigned to do it individually can sign up just as a student. So you just put in University of Arkansas. There's no fee. And to the collegiate site, you've got Collegiate Beef Quality Assurance, which has 28 modules. The Collegiate Humane Equine Management, which I haven't looked at, but maybe Dr. Jack has and others. Collegiate Dairy Animal Care and Quality Assurance, and Collegiate Beef Industry Food Safety, which has 7 modules. Here's some of the beef quality assurance. There's a lot of them, and they address many of the issues we've talked about, actually more than what we've talked about. We've talked about handling today. That's been the focus. Residue avoidance, there's going to be vaccination, biosecurity basics. There's a lot of, and these aren't videos, these are slides, like a PowerPoint slide system. There's no video or audio to it. You just go through and view the videos, take a quiz at the end. You can retake the quiz if you mess up, if you want 100%. And then after you complete all the modules, you get a certificate that you can print out and show your manager. Okay, so I think we might want to consider in some of our courses even maybe developing these as a homework assignment or something. I don't think it can hurt to educate too much. Beef Quality Assurance does have templates, fill in the blanks. This is how, if we've got a downer, this is how we're going to handle it. This is the piece of equipment that we're going to use. I have those in the farm manager's books. There's also assessing ourselves on cattle handling. How many of our animals slip when they come out of the chute? How many times are we using the prod? I think we should consider that we measure a lot of different things and that we ought to measure our handling also, so that we can get a baseline of where we are and evaluate it periodically and see where we go. So those are just some other things, and we'll develop those further. So I appreciate your time and attention. Thank everybody for being here. Dr. Looper for providing it, and the popcorn and the Cokes and everything. So thank you all very much.